Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this public hearing and special meeting here in Springfield Township. I would like everyone to, well, first let's start with roll call. Mr. Burning.
Yes, Mr. Burning?
Here.
Ms. McFarland?
Present.
Mr. Honolo?
Present.
All the trustees are present.
Next, I would ask everyone, would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to thank everyone for coming. This evening, we are going to have a public hearing concerning the proposed contract with the City of Mount Healthy to designate a joint economic development zone in Springfield Township. The public comments and recommendations on the contract will be taken during the public hearing portion of our agenda this evening. Immediately after the conclusion of the public hearing, we're going to hold a special meeting of the Board of Trustees, and that will be to consider and potentially adopt a resolution approving the proposed contract or a modified version of the proposed contract with the City of Mount Healthy to designate the zone and to authorize the Township Fiscal Officer to direct the Hamilton County Board of Elections to submit the resolution to the electorate on the May 6th, 2014 primary election. We're going to start off our presentation this evening with a PowerPoint where we're going to go over the background, what the purpose of this meeting is, the background concerning the JED, what a JED is, and so let's start right in with that, since there's quite a bit of information that we're going to want to go through here this evening. The first thing that we want to discuss is we're going to have explanation as to information as to why the Board of Trustees is considering a joint economic development zone for Springfield Township and how that fits into the township's long-range plans. One of the purposes of this meeting is, as I said, for public input, and we'll give everyone an opportunity to speak later in the meeting. We're going to have a detailed presentation by the board and our staff, and when we get to the public comment part of the meeting, we're going to ask that everyone sign in and designate whether you're a proponent or an opponent, if you know, and we'll make sure that everyone gets to make their comments. After that, as I said, we're going to have board discussion and possible action relating to the JED's contract. This is a statutorily required meeting as part of the enactment process, and we want to hear from you and take into consideration any of your comments prior to taking action on the JED's contract with the City of Mount Healthy. To kind of review some of our previous actions concerning this, concerning a JED's contract, we've really been talking about a JEDS for a number of years here in Springfield Township. In budget meetings, in other discussions that we've had at other public meetings, and also with our citizens, it's been one of the things that has been proposed as a possible way to provide some additional revenue in light of the cuts which we have known are coming, that the township has faced now for some time as a result of changes in state law. We had an all-day trustee work session back in August where we were looking at our budgets and our 5-year plans for what the financial picture of the township looks like, and in the JEDs was a topic of discussion at that time. We've also considered proposed JED legislative changes that have been discussed with the state legislature and have testified in Columbus before a committee of the House of Representatives regarding how those can affect local governments here in Southwest Ohio. We've had meetings with churches, schools, and businesses on 2 separate occasions here this past fall, where we tried to get out as much information as possible on this issue. And we had a hearing on November 4th, 2013, on the proposed JED contract that was before the board at that time. I anticipate that if this matter goes further, there will be additional meetings and opportunities to discuss this in the future. We're also going to have a discussion here this evening about exactly what the JEDS is, why we're proposing that it would be a contract with Mount Healthy, how the thing will work, and in what way, if any, it will affect you. Some of the other things that we're going to discuss here this evening is some of the background that brings us to this particular issue. What are the unique characteristics of our township, the financial structure of our township? We're going to take a quick look back over the past 10 years at some of the changes that we've experienced, what the recommendations in our vision and master plan have been, and some of the issues and challenges that are facing us, and what our current situation is. So there's kind of a lot of ground here, but we're going to try and cover it in as succinct a manner as possible, and still have time for everyone who wants to speak. We'll also talk about our 5- and 10-year plan recommendations, and what the JEDS funds will be used for, and what impacts the township and our citizens are going to experience if we do not pass a JEDS and revenues are not increased in the township. And with that, I think I'm going to turn this over to Chris Gilbert, who is going to go through some of the, there you are, Chris, some of the nuts and bolts about the JEDS.
Thanks, Mr. Hunterlaw. As mentioned, I think it's important for the audience as well as those that may be here that weren't at previous meetings to learn exactly what the JEDS is and how it is to be adopted and what the purpose of it is. The Joint Economic Development Zone, essentially, as you're aware, townships are not permitted by state law to enact an income or payroll tax like a municipal form of government, except in situations where a JEDS is adopted. A JEDS is a part of a state law that does permit a village or city to cooperatively enter into an agreement with a township in which a payroll tax or earnings tax is collected by the city or village that the township would partner with, and that income tax would be levied against those individuals who work in the township or in the designated zone. The revenues collected are then split between the city or village and the township to share the revenue in accordance with the term of whatever agreement is reached between the township and the partnering municipality. JEDS enable townships and cities or villages to use this revenue to address concerns associated with diminishing local revenues, economic development, growth, and annexation issues. Annexation, most of the contracts that are in place require that the partner municipality not annex any township property for the term of the agreement. JEDs allow governmental entities to include certain properties in the community in the JED, so the contract and the agreement would specify what the zone is and which properties are included in the zone. How does the JED create revenue for the township? As mentioned, the mutual agreement that's reached between the township and the municipality would then levy the income tax up to the rate that the neighbor municipality currently has in place. So, for example, if your partner municipality is 1.5, you can go up to that. You just can't go beyond it. And the businesses and employees within the designated zone would pay the earnings tax that the municipality would collect. The partnering city or village would then collect the earnings tax, and as mentioned, the revenues collected would be split between the township and the collecting municipality based on whatever agreement or percentage split is reached in the actual contract. What areas are included in this proposed JEDS? All proposed property in Springfield Township where businesses and or individuals are employed would be included in the JEDS. You can see the map here. Everything in the greenish color would be included in the zone, and that's everywhere where someone is employed or a business is located. Who would vote on the proposed JEDS? All Springfield Township registered voters would be able to vote on the proposed JEDS on May 6th if this measure would go further and be placed on the May 6th ballot, as Mr. Hunterlaw indicated. Who will pay this earnings tax? Only the businesses and individuals that work in the township would be subject to the proposed 1.5% earnings tax. So, for example, if you live in the township and you work somewhere else in another jurisdiction, you will not have to pay this JEDS earnings tax. However, if you live in the township and work in the township, or if you work in the township and live somewhere else, you would be subject to the JEDS earnings tax.
Thank you, Chris. In some of our discussions that we've had when we were discussing the prior JEDS that was being considered, the Board of Trustees has had discussions, and this was at some of the considerations that were brought to us by residents about not having the JEDS tax apply to township residents who work in Springfield Township. And the board has indicated their commitment to make such an agreement, or to basically we would create a community improvement corporation, and it would be for the purpose of encouraging and fostering economic development in the township. The board would utilize the CIC to offer a township resident economic development grant to township residents who pay into the JEDS, similar to what's been done in other jurisdictions. The grant payments to residents would be equal to the amount of JEDS earnings tax that is paid by the resident. The economic development grant will be used to encourage individuals who work and live in the township to remain residents, and those people that live elsewhere and work here to move into the township and make it their home. That's the purpose behind it. The Resident Economic Development Grant is a grant that would be paid for people who work here and pay this earnings tax. It would be equal to the amount that they paid in. It would be administered by the Springfield Township Community Improvement Corporation. And so anybody who works here in a district that is part of the JEDS would be eligible for it. And as I said, the purpose of it is to promote economic development here in Springfield Township. So, if you're sitting in the audience and you're wondering, how is this proposal going to affect me, it's kind of like this. If you're a township resident and you don't work in the township, let's say you work in the city of Cincinnati or somewhere else, this JEDS will not affect you at all. This is not an income tax that is going to apply to people's income. You have to work here in the township for it to apply to you. If you're a township resident and you work in the township, your earnings would be subject to the JEDS tax, but you would be able to receive a grant payment at the end of the year equal to the amount that you paid into the earnings tax. Therefore, you would be made whole through the Residential Economic Development Incentive Grant. If you're a township resident and you do not work at all, for example, as a senior citizen or someone who's retired, the JEDS will not have any effect on you. The JEDS will benefit all township residents is it will create a new revenue source other than property taxes. As most of you probably know, property taxes are almost the only way that townships in Ohio can raise revenue. The JEDs would provide essential funding necessary to keep the township moving forward, enabling the continuation of critical township services, and to sustain the momentum that we have gained through recent economic development and land use planning efforts. It will also provide funding for important and required general fund services without a corresponding increase in property taxes. The proposed agreement structure would be, our partnering municipality would be Mount Healthy. It would be a 1.5% earnings tax on payroll and net business profits. The income distribution of the money that was collected would go 85% to Springfield Township and 15% to Mount Healthy. Springfield Township would pay the collection costs. The anticipated revenue, and this is, I'm going to tell you, this is an estimate because we do not know exactly what this will be, because many of the employers who are that would be subject to this are private entities, and there's no way of knowing what their payroll is. But it's anticipated that the revenue would be approximately $1.1 million, with the township receiving approximately $930,000, and again, that would be less any money that was paid out in resident economic development grants through the CIC. Kind of the timeline going forward, I anticipate that we will have additional public discussion meetings between now and May, and as we try and get information concerning this issue out to all of the citizens in the township, the idea being that if the board decides to pass a resolution to put this on the ballot, it would go on the May 6, 2014 ballot. We've had some concerns, as we've met previously with some of our residents. There's been questions that have been raised regarding, is this a tax grab? There's been fairness questions raised. Is this something that would apply to everyone who works in the township? And I will tell you, if you're a home-based, business, it's not just the way the law is written in Ohio. It will not apply to you. So if you're like a one-person, you have a home office or something, this is not going to. The JEDs will not apply to your income, and it's just the way Ohio law is written. There's other discussions about, well, what about if you work outside of the township? There's been questions raised about that, and I think we'll talk more about that, about all these issues this evening. We've also had discussions regarding nonprofit land uses. And if you look at the map over there, you'll see that a large portion of Springfield Township is comprised of nonprofit land uses, approximately 30%. And so we have 30% of the parcels here in the township pay no tax at all. They pay zero property tax. And so the 70% of the property owners who are paying property tax are footing 100% of the cost of running our local government. And this was one of the reasons that as a board of trustee, when we've experienced the loss in revenue due to the state cuts, that we had to look at some way to try not to keep just piling more and more property taxes onto our residents, particularly when I think it, in the end, can have an effect on the value of our properties and the ability to sell our homes if we ever wanted to do so. And so for that reason, we've looked at a way of maybe making this a more equitable sharing of the tax burden of running our government. And then, of course, there's always the issue that's been raised about taxation without representation. And, we've had, people say, well, if I'm a resident, I get a vote on this, but if I own property and I don't live here, it could affect me if I'm a business owner, but I'm not going to get a vote on it. And, we'll talk about that, but that's kind of life in America. I mean, that's all over. If I work in the city of Cincinnati, I don't get a vote on their property tax or on their earnings tax. It's just the way our government's set up. With that, I think I'll turn, we're going to go into some of the background, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike Hennenkamp, and Mike, let you discuss some of those issues.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hunterlaw. As we look at, kind of why this JED, as Mr. Hunterlaw has talked about, why the JED's being considered, it really comes about to replace some recent lost revenue that the township has had due to some decisions made at the state legislative level. And we've looked at what options are available, and they really basically come down to the options of cutting services or increasing revenues. It's that basic. Townships really only have really two substantial ways in which we can raise revenues, one being a property tax and the other being an income tax or an earnings tax through this JEDS. We do also have some limited ability with user fees, but user fees really, you don't have the ability to raise substantial dollars. I mean, we do that for some park fees and some rental fees and things like that, but to pay for the major services, it's really just property tax and an earnings tax through the JEDS. What I want to do, and try to go through this quick, because I know many of you have been through these presentations 3 or 4 times, and but for those who haven't, we try to provide the background, but just provide some of the background of the township. What are some of the unique characteristics that set Springfield Township apart? What makes us different, and why those things are important? Every time there's a tax issue or there's an action taken by the state, it affects all local governments, I think, differently. Sometimes hurts more than others. And in our case, we have some unique situations that we've dealt with, and a lot of it has to do with our land use. We are a residential community. This is home to many of our residents. We don't have a lot of corporations and a lot of business. Most of the businesses that we do have are there to provide the support to the folks that do call this community home. So 60% of us, of our land use is residential. About 30%, as Mr. Hunterlaw alluded to, is in some type of public or non-public status, that being a school, a church, or some nonprofit activity that is exempt from property tax. And roughly about 10% of all the property in Springfield Township is in some kind of commercial or industrial land use designation. We're an extremely diverse community. For a community of roughly 40,000 people, it's hard to find any place really in America that has the degree of diversity that Springfield Township has, both in terms of race, in terms of income levels. We really run the gamut. A very interesting community. And we have a great deal of what I'll call segmentation. Our community is not contiguous. As you can see on any of the maps on the board, we have several areas of our community that are completely detached from sort of the main body, and yet we still have to go through other jurisdictions to provide service. That's mostly a result of incorporations that have occurred over the years, some annexations, but it's really what state law has allowed to happen, where townships can become fragmented. We have 7 different school districts. We have sort of almost 12 different neighborhoods in our community that are very much different than one another, and a great number of zip codes, making for a lot of complexity to our community. Intergovernmental cooperation, our ability to communicate and work with our neighboring communities is essential, and we've done that throughout our history. The township's financial structure is also somewhat unique. We have 28 different specifically restricted funds. What we're talking about tonight is primarily our general fund, and that's the one that's been impacted mostly by the loss of some revenues, but there are 28 different funds, and so in a way our township budget is really kind of 28 separate budgets. That's not completely unique to townships, but What is unique is that our general fund is not our largest fund. We have specific levies that pay for some of our major safety services, for example, police and fire. About 70% of all of the township's revenue that we receive comes from property tax. It's why we do have a fairly substantial property tax. But of that property tax, for every dollar that a resident pays in property tax in Springfield Township, only about 26 cents of that is going to Springfield Township. So the remaining, roughly 73, 74 cents is going either to the school district or it's going to the county to provide for services that they're required to pay. And about 70% of all of our expenses are for police and fire. And again, that's not really that unique. That's pretty consistent with a lot of local governments, unless you get into a really large local government that's doing a lot more capital. And again, also because of that fact, that's where most of our human capital is, 70% of all of our expenditures are expended on personnel. And again, that's fully in line with police and fire. The township has been very active really since in pretty much the last 20 years of being forward-thinking and very aggressive in our strategic planning efforts. In 1996, we adopted our first vision plan that sets forth some sort of overriding goals. That plan was updated in 2007. We had probably 50 or 60 different business and community residents participate in that process. And what was interesting is in the 2007 vision plan, so going back almost 7 years, the JED is recommended as a step that the township should pursue as a tool to bring in additional revenues. We've updated our land use plans. We've created land use plans and updated them generally about every 5 years to keep current there. And then in 2011, we embarked on a very, very expansive planning process. We had, I think, close to 75 different township residents and business leaders participate in a year-long process, and in 2011 we adopted our comprehensive neighborhood master plan, which had sort of far-reaching goals for a great number of things. And the first goal listed in that plan regarding some policy decisions on finance is to adopt a JED, or a JEDS is in that plan as well. So as Mr. Hunterlaw mentioned, this is not a new concept. It's something we've really been talking about for 7 to 10 years. We've done a lot of what we call results-oriented budgeting, focusing very specifically on what we're going to achieve when the board authorizes a budget item. They want to know what the result, what the outcome is going to be of that particular thing. And we've worked closely with a citizen group, a budget and finance committee. That group has met and provided input to the board and to the staff since 2007. We also have an all-day monthly staff meeting, which we call Performance Stat, where each of the departments are held accountable to achieve a certain and a very specific goal. If there's an issue or a problem, they're given that task and they're tasked with coming up with a solution. And we measure that performance. And if we're hitting our goal, well, then we continue that program. If we're not, we keep adjusting it until we're able to meet that goal. I'm not going to read this. This is the township's strategic mission statement. And basically, we're here to provide high-quality services at the most innovative and cost-effective way we can. And we're designing this in order to provide public value to our residents. We want our services to be of value. And over the years, we've certainly received the response back from our residents that our services are of tremendous value to them. I've talked about all of the planning that we've done, but in a nutshell, if you really wanted to boil it down to kind of three things, the top township priorities in some ways and fashion are we need to be able to achieve financial stability, and we need to do that through our continued effective and efficient management of our resources and the delivery of public services. We know that as an aging bedroom community, we have to revitalize and accentuate our township neighborhoods to make sure that we're continuing to provide housing choices and opportunities for our residents, as well as commercial uses that will meet the demands that the residents need, that make this a desirable place for someone to want to live. And in addition to that, we're always looking to improve our communications and quality of life issues through business and resident engagement, and those are things where, recreation programs or arts and enrichment are critical to be able to encourage families to come in. We're not going to be a corporate community. That's just not the way the community was developed, and that's not the way the land use patterns are. We need to maximize where we have commercial opportunity, but we are primarily a residential community, and that's what the residents generally love about the township. We do face a lot of very difficult challenges. We've talked about some of those unique community characteristics that we have. Obviously, there's things that none of us have any control over, what's happening globally and nationally to the economy, and that has impact to the township as well as any community. And of course, we face legislative actions that sometimes can be adverse to the best interest of Springfield Township. And we faced in recent years a great deal, and really why we're here tonight is a great deal of our revenue loss that has occurred as a result of some of the actions that have taken place at the state level, mostly at about 2010 when the state repealed the estate tax. They have seriously reduced the local government fund. They have eliminated the reimbursement they gave for tangible personal property tax. They've eliminated a public utility tax that we received. This in combination with the economy that we saw kind of beginning in 2008 and some decrease in our assessed property valuations as a result of that have had a very big impact on the township. The estate tax itself was about $1.5 million per year. Now that's looking at a 10-year average. The estate tax can fluctuate pretty greatly from year to year, but only 1 year in the last 20 has it been below $1 million, and in some years it's been as high as 3. So on average, it's been about $1.5 million. The local government fund has been reduced really in half. I mean, we saw about a $90,000 loss in that amount in 2011, and it's escalated to where we used to receive somewhere in the neighborhood of about $750,000 in local government fund, and that's been reduced down right around 300 or 350 at this point. And I mentioned the tangible personal property tax. So all of these things, and I think sometimes when I mention this to resident groups, I hear a familiar comment that, well, you shouldn't get any of that state money. You should learn to survive on your own. What the misnomer here is, these are your dollars. These aren't the state's dollars. These are all revenues that are generated locally and have historically been returned to local governments, but that's how the state has balanced their budget, is they're just keeping a bigger share of those dollars. If you total up everything, we've had impacts to our other funds, our road district, our fire district, our police district have also been impacted by some of these changes. But all told, you're looking at roughly on average of about $2.5 million a year that 5 years ago we were receiving, we're not now. And that essentially is why we're here. We had a balanced budget, we had long-range projections, and had these actions not taken place, we wouldn't be here. And I'm not necessarily blaming the state. The state did what they did for reasons that they thought were in the state's best interest. But the fact remains is those are the dollars that are missing, and that's really the gap that we're trying to fill. And you get a little idea. This is the impact of the average amount of revenue that we receive by source in the township, and you can see what a huge amount that estate tax was. It was a very unpopular tax for a lot of folks, but it was something the township had relied on for close to 100 years. And it was not, it wasn't phased out, it was just gone beginning in 2013. That tax was eliminated, and then of course the local government fund has been cut significantly. So when you look at the total, this is what's missing from our general fund budget. It's close to 53% of all of our general fund revenue will not be there in 2014. The general fund doesn't, it's not as simple to understand as, say, when you say police and fire, everybody understands what the impact you're talking about and what those services are. When you get into the general fund, it's a fund that funds a wide variety of different things, but what's critical here is many of them are statutorily required. So we don't have a choice whether to do some of these things. Legal expenses, election expenses, or utilities, or cemetery maintenance, We carry debt service. We have infrastructure improvements and grant match. We have auditor expenses. This is the fund that pays for a variety of specific staff functions and provides the funding for our elected officials, for the administrator's office, our finance department. These are things that impact every single department in the township. So while admin is sometimes thought about as a separate department, it's really a department that's involved and intertwined with every one of our departments. Beginning really in 2008, before we were aware that the legislature was going to make the changes that they did, we understood that there were some impacts occurring to the economy. And so the board directed staff on a very aggressive review of our budgets, and we began looking at ways to prepare sort of for this day. Again, we didn't know they were going to eliminate the estate tax and do some of those other things, but we knew that dollars were getting tighter in the economy and soured. So we made changes between 2009 and 2011 where we reduced our general fund budget 35%. We took it from $4.8 million per year down to $3.1. And these are just some of the ways in which we did it. We eliminated some programs with our brush and recreation services. We did some employee reassignment and restructuring. We reduced contracted services. And quite frankly, there was a lot of capital and infrastructure projects that we didn't move forward with. During that same period of time, we did pass a police levy. This was probably necessary, wasn't necessarily related to the tough budget times, but something that came where we were outside the useful life of our police district funds. We've completely restructured the way we do things back at our senior and community center, and we were able to increase revenues for this center over 300%. From about $65,000 to $220,000. And what this basically did is it made the senior center operationally, at least, kind of a break-even proposition. It's not year in and year out, and in fact, this year we did see a reduction in some of those revenues just because of, again, what the economy is. And this does not project, it doesn't cover all of the capital that's required for those buildings, but big changes and did have a huge impact. We've made a lot of other changes in program elimination, significantly changed with how we do things with Waycross Community Media. We continued making staffing reductions really across the board. 4 full-time positions and 5 part-time positions were eliminated in our service and admin departments, and we've really kept benefits to a minimum. With police and fire contracts, we've had great success with both of our fire and police unions have come to the table and worked very closely with us to make changes. All the non-contract employees generally, except with a few exceptions, have had salary freezes since 2010, and we've done very well to keep our health insurance costs down. We've made operational efficiencies by doing some consolidation in some of the reductions with our code enforcement. We reduced some of our staff, and we have our police officers doing some of the inspections for nuisance-related issues. We have our service department doing nuisance cleanups as opposed to having that contracted. This has resulted in a great deal of savings, and we renegotiated fire contracts. We have 2 parts of the township that we provide fire service through another entity, at least first response service, either by Coleraine Township and the city of Springdale. That's because we have some of these outlying areas that we just can't provide the response time. But the renegotiation of these contracts was close to $150,000 worth of savings. So it goes on and on. We continued to do a number of different things with expenditure reduction. We did add a 1 mil fire levy. Again, this was something that was probably going to come up as a result, not necessarily economy related. We've also been very aggressive with our economic development. The Whitten Road corridor, we've made substantial improvements in coordination with Hamilton County to the corridor and the streetscape, resulting in about $20 million of new commercial investment along the corridor. We're committed also to the Vine Street corridor and the Hamilton Avenue corridor. These are our other 2 primarily non-residential corridors where we do have some business activity. and we're working aggressively on plans to address those areas. So we look at our 5-year projections, and I realize this is always a very difficult slide, a lot of numbers on there. What we're showing, and these are projections as of October 26th, we're just now closing out the year and be able to update these, but they're generally pretty much, this gives you a pretty good picture of what's going on. And you can really see how we see a reduction in our revenues starting in 14 and what happens. And this is sort of a do-nothing scenario. If we were to just continue on the path that we are, not really increase expenditures very much other than for some, for some inflationary things. But basically, we keep going, you see what happens. And in right here, you see in 2016, our carryover is down to about $184,000. That's not a number that would allow us to start 2017 because we receive our monies through tax receipts, and they generally come in about April or May of each year, and we must have carryover to carry us through that first part of the year. So when I look at this 5-year projection, if we were to do nothing, we're out of money essentially at the end of 2015. That's the last year we can really get through most of 16, but we couldn't start 17. And that's really what this picture shows. These deficits that carry on here and here, they're not real numbers because as a township, we can't deficit spend, so we really wouldn't accumulate that deficit. But it shows kind of what happens if you don't do anything and how far. And so it's critical that something has to happen here so that you maintain the carryover. You really can't wait until you get to 16 for this to happen, or you're going to, obviously you're going to be lagging behind. And that's where you get to. You either need to raise revenues or make expenditure reductions. This shows our other, the next two slides are our other two major funds, our police district fund. Again, a pretty positive picture. The police district and the fire district are both funded by property tax levies. And it's just the nature, if you know anything about property tax levies in general, about every 5, 7, 8 years, you're just going to have to do something. That's just the way they work because of the fixed nature of the revenues that you receive. What we did see in some early years when the economy went bad is our revenues actually decreased for the first time about 3 years ago. That had never happened, at least any time that I had been here previous, and that was due to some assessed valuation reductions. But in general, a fairly positive 5-year picture. We know that in 2017, that is the year in which, is the last year there's enough revenue to start them into 2018. So assuming these were to hold, you would be looking at taking some kind of an action probably in the year 2017. The Fire and EMS District Fund is a very similar situation. The numbers are a little different, but as they get down to 2017, that is a year that we'd be very hopeful that we can make it into 2017, have enough revenues to get through to start 2018. But again, some type of levy, some type of action would be necessary at that time. What all of those slides really boil down to and mean is that what I talked about earlier is that the Township General Fund is in need of some type of increase, or you've got to reduce expenditures generally by this amount each year. That averages about $1 million a year over the next 5 years. If you were to either reduce expenditures by that amount each year or, obviously add new revenue, that allows you to continue on the track that you're on. Obviously, if you're making reductions, there's going to be things you're doing differently. We talked about the police and fire in their situation. We really haven't gotten into the road levy and the capital improvement portion. A big portion of the general fund is used to do some road and service department expenditures and capital match funds. But clearly there needs to be some type of activity taken as well. So really the JEDs, what we're focusing on with this discussion of the JEDs is this issue here. These other issues still must be addressed. How they will be addressed will either be through property tax or some other mechanism during that time. but we generally look at it and do our projections in 5 years. That's about as far as we can get any degree of accuracy. In looking out 5 years, that's kind of the picture. But this requires some action this year. The board has asked staff, and we have provided a number of different options as to how we deal with this situation, and we've spent basically all of 2013 studying, if we want to maintain sort of things in its current organizational structure, what types of new additional taxes would be required to support that. That's a portion of clearly what we're talking about tonight. One of the other, scenarios we've examined is if we simply say, this is the money we have, why don't you operate within your means, and, these are the dollars available, don't raise any new taxes, and use the money you have the best you can. We've done that. The problem with that particular scenario is that, the services basically become, unrecognizable. There's so many severe cuts. You wouldn't have any type of recreation, senior services, any types of arts and enrichment. And it also, ultimately, you're going to make substantial cuts to the admin staff, which is already at pretty much bare minimum. So our ability to provide services to our other departments would greatly be impacted and meet our statutory requirements. We looked at, can we provide our services to other jurisdictions, some of the smaller jurisdictions around us, for instance, the city of Mount Healthy, the city of Wyoming, North College Hill, Green Hills. We have one of the largest police departments and fire departments. We have outstanding services, some of the best services in the state. And we believe that we could provide our services to these jurisdictions cheaper than what they are providing it under their own department. And that scenario is something that makes a lot of sense. The problem is it requires one of the other jurisdictions to be willing to do it. And so far, we don't have a taker. Mount Healthy is a community at this point that's probably expressed the most interest at looking at our fire service. It's a possible solution for their scenario, but at this point, we don't have anything. Collaborating through a joint district is something similar. So rather than us use our department to provide it, we form a joint district with these other entities. And it does have some, it does make some sense. The problem from our perspective is it makes more sense for the smaller entities. It really doesn't save the township a lot of money because we're still going to be 17 square miles. We're still going to have 23,000 calls for service in our police department. We're still going to have 5,000 EMS and fire runs. Those aren't going to go down, and we're still going to need the same staff to do that, the same type of equipment. It is beneficial to the others, but it's not as much for us as a cost saver. But we've explored it, and we continue to be open to dialogue with our neighboring communities about this. And the last one is internal consolidation. We've done some internal consolidation, as we've talked about, by cross-training employees to do different things and merging positions. We're looking at doing more. Can you do police and fire consolidation? We've had some discussions, and we've done some studies on a pilot program that we were hoping to do this year. So far, we're not quite there yet, but it's something that we're continuing to explore and continuing to have dialogue with our two police and fire departments about making happen. We've talked about our comprehensive neighborhood master plan that we adopted. We continue to look at what we call our top 10 redevelopment sites in the township. Again, we talked about this planning a little bit earlier. And as we look at kind of our long-range planning and what our 5 to 10-year plan is and some of the things that we think need to happen, obviously we need to continue doing the things that we've been doing with our operational and personnel to make sure that we're hitting the efficiencies. We need to, the JEDS obviously is something that we believe is the best, it's the best play given the hand that we've been dealt. It's not a great play under any circumstance. We wish we didn't have to do it or recommend it, but under all of the different options available, we think it's the best play to keep our community moving forward. We're looking at some additional internal consolidations we talked about, as well as shared service. We have several proposals out to communities. And then In 2017 and 2018, we think there's an opportunity to do some levy consolidation with police and fire and possibly even our road district to merge those into one singular levy to provide a little bit of clarity for residents so that they don't have three levies and always see a property tax coming up. I think as we talk about why this JED is being proposed, it allows us to move forward. It allows us to keep on the path of moving forward and implementing the goals that were established in the Comprehensive Neighborhood Master Plan. I think it's what keeps our community healthy through our neighborhood revitalization, our corridor economic development plans. We have a very aggressive core district economic development strategy and plan, which we think could have a substantial impact to the township. And it allows us to maintain or even slightly improve our service levels, which, obviously are important to protecting property values and being able to retain new businesses and residents into the township, keep the ones we have and attract new ones. I think the impacts of taking no action are going to have a very, very severe impact on if we don't do something or if we make the cuts to balance our budget. You're going to see, reduced service delivery and admin. We're going to see it in an already stretched public works and infrastructure area, or parks, recreation, the things that, the young families really look forward, and we've been very, very successful do. We really won't be able to do much economic development. It will have impact on our safety services, maybe not immediately, but over a period of time, you're going to see impacts to those departments. And ultimately, we think that's going to have, a reduction in property values and the quality of life in the township, and it's going to place some demand to provide that on some other level. It's certainly not going to help the schools. It's certainly not going to be beneficial to the county to see the township go into economic decline, and certainly won't be providing any state revenues to the state as well. So, Joe, that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that as background on this JEDS. And I'm not going to sit here and read the slide. You can kind of see what we've gone over so far. I think probably a few comments, though, are worthwhile making. And as you can see, this topic of a JEDS has been discussed and considered here at the township since 2007. And in the last 6 years, I can tell you as one of the members of the board and my fellow trustees, Tom Bryan, who was on the board at that time, we resisted the idea of a JEDS, and it was not our purpose to ever want to have a payroll tax in Springfield Township. And we always said, let's make cuts, let's make the 35% cuts that we talked about, and let's keep looking at ways to try and avoid having to do that. I can tell you as a business owner here in the township, the idea of having a tax that's going to apply to all my employees is not a popular one. It's not popular with me or them. But I don't know how many people read the Enquirer on Sunday, but the forum section, the whole topic was send our tax money home. And it was a couple of years ago when the state of Ohio, their rainy day fund was broke, and Casey came into office. There was a fundamental change in state policy, and our governor and the leadership in the House and Senate decided we're going to, in essence, declare war on local governments, and one of the ways we're going to balance our budget is we're going to take the tax dollars that they have for 100 years been sending up here, instead of sharing them back with the local communities, they were going to keep them, and they did. And if you read this article in Sunday's paper, the Enquirer contacted Kasich's office and said, hey, you now have $2 billion in your rainy day fund. You've built this up. Isn't it time to give some of the money back to our taxpayers in their local jurisdictions? Kasich's representative was, tell them not to expect anything. It's not coming back. And so that's the hand we've been dealt, and it's for that reason that we're here. And I think if you look at this is a township trustee, is someone who's been, put in this position, and for Gwen and Mark, the option of doing nothing is not an option. And what we'll be left with will not be better for our community. So I guess as we're going to open this up here in a moment for public comment, I want you to realize this is something that has been considered for a long time. We have spent days, hours and hours and days discussing this, looking at every angle, trying to find another way to do it, to make ends meet. But I think once you start looking at what does this township start to look like if all the cuts go into place, we do nothing to replace anything, it's not going to be a place that you're going to want to live. And so it's for that reason that we're here tonight talking about this. I do see that we have a rather large number of persons here this evening, and in the interest of conserving time and to conduct business of the board and to ensure that everyone who's present gets an opportunity to speak, I propose that we have a 5-minute limitation on anyone who does speak this evening. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So move.
Seconded.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Mr. Honor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Yeah, let's do.
On the website.
A good point that Mr. Hennenkamp is bringing up is we have on our website, if you want to know more information about this issue, our staff has spent an incredible amount of time and put all the background data, everything you want to ever know about the JEDs, and probably more than most people will want to read, but it is all in a document on our website available for everybody to review. So I do put that out to you. And I guess I'll just say before we start public comment, I would ask that when you go, we're going to have anybody who wants to speak come up to the podium. We'd ask that you sign in, and I'm going to ask that you state your name and address for the record. And while the person speaking is up at the podium, I'll ask that everyone else remain quiet. We've always had one thing in our community is a great tradition of people respecting others when they're in a public meeting. So we'd ask that everybody continue that.
Joe, I'll keep track of the time when people start,
That's okay.
just so you know.
This won't be as, I think it's city council, they have a red or green
Yeah,
light.
I'll just wave to you.
We'll just say,
5
give you the
minutes.
sign that your time's up. But
Right.
the other thing that I would say is if someone gets up and what they say is exactly how you feel, you don't have to get up and just repeat exactly what they said again. It's all right to get up and say, my name's so-and-so, and what Mr. Smith just said, I agree with. You can do that too and be heard just as well. And so if you do have a position, though, I would ask that you thoughtfully and logically try and present it to us so that we can consider whatever position you might have as we decide how to move forward here in the township.
Mr. Holland, just on the timing,
Yes.
if we could, just to make sure it's fair, if somebody asks a question and we respond, let's take that time out.
Okay.
I want it to be.
I didn't bring my stopwatch, but we'll
If you, I can
Right.
do a stopwatch if you want.
no, I think we'll be fine.
Can we do it? All right. I want to make sure, because if we take up 4 minutes of the person's time, I don't want them to be requested to sit down. We can get long-winded.
Mike,
Joe, I would also mention that as the board's policy, you did decide to videotape this meeting. So just to have that noted that, on public hearings, it's the board's discretion whether to videotape, and we did elect to do that. So we are being videotaped this evening,
Okay, that's fine.
for the record.
Before we start public comment, so I don't forget, we did receive a letter here which I'm going to read into the record. This is from Jim Golan from the Finneytown Civic Association, and he said that he offered a motion for unanimous approval of the revised JED is laid out in detail at their meeting by Chris Gilbert. And he said, let me explain my reasoning for unanimous support, which was approved by the Finneytown Civic Association. He said, Jan and I are residents of Springfield Township and the Finneytown Local School District for 50-plus years and counting. They've seen the stress on property taxes in a school district without a significant economic engine. The loss of local government funds and the estate tax are part of a plan at the state level to improve Ohio's economic competitiveness. He goes on and says, the recession of 2008 has diminished prospects for increasing property taxes for Springfield Township residents. The administration is multitasking to reduce its head count to 8, an unimaginable number for a township of this size. And what he's referring to there is we have 8 people in administration for approximately 38,000 people. But important development projects like Winton Road Streetscape simply can't be funded from a shrunken general administration budget. Would brand new Bob Evans and refurbished Arby's even exist without Streetscape, a recent development project? The JED's plan, detailed elsewhere, has several moving parts. I focus on incentives. It is now designed for the May ballot. A township resident working in the township is made whole at year-end, so there is no incentive to move out of the township. This JEDS is not a new invention. Sycamore Township has 4 JEDs operating. I support this JED. Jim Golan. So we'll note that for the record. Next, we have a number of people here that would like to speak this evening, and let's start with Tina Prenacito.
Before you start timing me, before we start, I just wanted to say about the time limit. My husband couldn't be here because he's at the Mount Healthy meeting. Can't be at 2 places at one time, so I might go over a little 5 minutes because I'm including some of his comments, but it definitely won't be much. But I just wanted to let you know he wanted to speak here, but you know, you can't be at 2 places at the same time. So I wanted to make sure I didn't get cut off. I might go over a little 5 minutes, but it won't be by much.
You need to make it 5 minutes. I mean, otherwise everybody can start saying they're speaking for their neighbor and this and that, so.
Okay, well then I'm going to speak super fast. Okay, I'm Tina Prenacito. I live at 745 Fleming. I'm a longtime resident of Springfield Township and a business owner. In fact, when I was looking to build a permanent location for my business more than 15 years ago, the township administrator, one of the trustees, wooed me to locate in the township rather than elsewhere, with the selling point that I would never have to pay tax on my business since townships can't legally impose an income tax. When I asked if that could change in the future, they told me absolutely not, since townships can't legally levy such a tax. At the time, he touted to me that it was an advantage for the township to not have an incomes or earnings tax, how it enticed businesses to the township and gave the township a major advantage in drawing businesses to locate in the township. Now it appears you're doing a complete 180 on what you told me. Not only does it appear that you're going back on your word to me that my business would never be taxed, but you're also going against your very own statements that such a tax is counterproductive to enticing and retaining businesses in the township. I do understand that times change and you have to change for the times, and you couldn't anticipate potential future budget shortfalls. And I understand that unexpected things come up, but they must be dealt with in an appropriate, responsible, and above-board manner. I believe that trying to impose a JEDS tax is not done in that manner. First of all, the original concept of the JEDS was to allow partnership between an undeveloped or underdeveloped township and a developed municipality that would mutually benefit all parties: the undeveloped township, the developed municipality, and the businesses paying the tax. The idea is that the municipality would provide needed services to the township, which would entice businesses to locate there, and everyone would come out ahead. The business would get services for the tax they're paying, but that's not what's going on in this situation. It appears that the JEDS tax is simply to generate a revenue stream from the businesses and the workers in the township with no new services being provided. This is contrary to the stated purpose of the JEDS. And I believe if you enact this, you will be personally responsible for driving away businesses from the township. You may continue to say, as I've heard, that you don't like the JEDS tax either, but your backs are up against the wall and it's the only tool we have left in our toolbox. If that's the case, I feel you might need to get another toolbox. And one idea is incorporation. If the township were to incorporate, many more revenue streams would be opened up, including access to greatly increased funds from the state. And I applaud Trustee McFarland for proposing to take another look at the idea of incorporation. But I stress that if you're going to take another look, it should probably be made by an impartial third party, because the biggest disadvantage to incorporating is a personal one for you township officials, because you would have redefined jobs or possibly be out of a job if it was incorporated. So it makes some of us wonder if the idea of incorporation is being brushed aside out of self-interest, which is why we would like an impartial outside expert to be consulted on this. We realize there's been changes over the past few years that have hurt due to state level changes, but result in more money being kept by the state and less to the local government. But the tide has been changing, as Mr. Honler indicated the Cincinnati Enquirer article. The tide is changing in terms of more money being sent back to local government, and you've said yourself that you have enough money to almost 2017, so wouldn't it be wiser to take a more prudent and less rash approach to the JEDS? The money might not be needed if more money comes back to local government, plus with property values on their way back up, that means more money for the township in the form of property taxes. I've also want to mention I've been disappointed in the use of false scare tactics to gain support for the JEDS. You mentioned possible cuts in the fire and police department, but the truth is that those are funded by separate levies, which are not in danger. There's no excuse for saying that the fire and police response times will be affected if the JEDS doesn't pass. While it is true that the general fund covers the administrative cost of processing payroll, it doesn't seem plausible that the printing of the fire and police department paychecks is going to have any direct effect on their response time. You've also tried to hit the residents where it hurts by threatening to close our beloved senior center and Grove Banquet Hall if the JEDS doesn't pass, but that also doesn't make sense. You've mentioned that these two facilities are generating enough income and rentals to be self-sustaining and are even predicted to make a profit. So why would you threaten to close two facilities that are making money? But back to points about the JEDS. Mike and Joe, when you were in Columbus, you know yourself you were reprimanded by the Ohio State legislators and told that what you were trying to do with the JEDS is not what it was intended for. It's not what they had in mind when they designed the JEDS, and there's currently a bill working its way through the state legislature to prevent this kind of abuse of the JEDS. I'm disappointed that the township would resort to this. I hope you will consider the public comments that are made today and not do what you did last time and vote to approve the JEDS resolution immediately after the hearing. If you're truly interested in what the township residents and business owners have to say, you'll take some time to reflect on the comments and have some discussion on how to proceed before you vote to move forward with the JEDS. Last time you waived the second reading because you said it was an emergency, but how can a possible financial shortfall that may or may not happen in 2 or 3 years be such a dire emergency? It seems that you are declaring an emergency because you want to pass the JEDS quickly before the Ohio legislature outlaws what you're trying to do. We will be watching, and if you take a vote immediately after this public hearing without taking time to consider, discuss, and research the information the public gave you at this hearing, you are proving that you have already made your minds up going into this, and this hearing is all for show. So I hope you will listen to the residents and business owners when we tell you we don't want this JEDS, and we don't believe there's any acceptable justification for it. Thank you.
You made it.
I did give you an extra minute.
Tina, you made it there. All right.
I gave her an extra minute.
I skipped some things too, but I tried to get it.
Load the screen to
Thank you.
There we go. Okay. Next, we have Dick Alexander.
I've been a resident of Springfield Township for 29 years. Your proposal to me makes excellent sense, and I'm favorable toward it. We have seen in repeated news stories the effect of the state government's decisions on local governments all over the state, and how many communities are struggling with this. I think at home, when income drops, when we're pressed financially, all of us take the same approach. The first thing we do is evaluate expenses, and we reduce our expenses wherever we can. And in my opinion, you have done that very well in the township. The list that was gone through earlier this evening, you've communicated before. And I think for a lot of us who've watched that closely, we've appreciated what you've done in the changes in programs, scaling back things, innovative solutions. And along with that, a number of township employees have sacrificed over the last few years as they've gone without pay increases. And I'm very appreciative of the entire township staff and what they've done in that way. At this point, to further reduce costs for the township would have, I think, a very negative effect on the township and on the residents. And it is time to look at the revenue side of this and how revenue can be increased. I think what frustrates us more than taxes is when we see governments not managing well. And to my mind, Springfield Township has been an excellent example of efficiency and very good management. And so now it's time to look at increasing revenue. And it makes sense that all who both live and work here share in the costs of township services. And as was laid out earlier, there'll come a time where property owners in the township are asked to contribute more as well to this. And that's reasonable because the JEDs won't cover all of the needs for coming years. In my mind, the JEDs is fair. I live in Springfield Township. I have worked in North College Hill for 29 years. I pay 1.5% income tax in North College Hill. I have never gotten to vote in an election there, but I've benefited from North College Hill City Services. When our organization has had break-ins, the police have come. They've been very helpful. When one of my coworkers had a medical emergency, we called 911. He was not a resident of North College Hill, but the paramedics responded, took him to the hospital, and that was obviously crucial for him. I looked out my office window in North College Hill and watched the street being repaved in front of my office. And so I benefited from city services, and it was very reasonable that I contribute to the cost of those services. To me, this really is a crunch time for Springfield Township. And if revenues are not increased, there will be then a necessary deterioration of services as there are further costs cut. And then there's no way for that to happen without property values declining, without seeing residents move out of the township. That will have a negative effect on businesses, the businesses that we depend on as we live here. And if we don't solve this and solve it beginning now, there is a decline that's coming. We don't have to look very far at communities very near here to see what's happened when those issues have not been addressed. And so, for my part, I would say this is the time to address it. And JEDs is one part of an overall solution to our economic challenges.
Thank you, Dick. Next, let's see here. How about we have Bill Eater.
My name is Bill Eater. I live at 10080 Spring Beauty Lane in Springfield Township. I also own the real estate across from Brentwood Shopping Center at Hempstead, where CVS is, and where we have an 8-store strip shopping center. I'm opposed to the proposed use, or should I say misuse, of the JEDs. The businesses in Springfield Township are not abundantly successful. They've been struggling, and they're just starting to get a little better than they were back in the worst part of the recession. If you look around, we've got 2 vacancies across the street in UDF. You got a vacancy, which is 50% of the building on the other side of the other side of the bowling alley here. We've got vacancies down in Brentwood Shopping Center. It's not that good. I've had to reduce rents substantially. And what bothers me the most is that you're trying to use the JEDS, the enabling statute, improperly. It's to benefit those businesses, where actually you're doing just the opposite. You're penalizing the businesses, making it harder for a business person to locate in Springfield Township and to be successful and have happy employees. And I think it's bad for townships to misuse the statute as you propose. As I understand it, you intend to use the money for, could be parks over on Caldwell Drive or any place, not for the economic development of the business areas. And that's not what the statute was intended for. It's a misuse of the statute. It's an overreaching, and it's probably unconstitutional. And I think it's bad for this township and other townships, because if you misuse the statute, what will happen is that a good law will be repealed and proper use of it will no longer be available. In addition, I believe that it'll be subject to a taxpayer lawsuit. It'll probably take 3 years, and it be decided in the courts of appeal. The township will incur attorney fees, probably $100,000. The taxpayers will incur attorney fees, probably $100,000. And in 3 years, it will be determined that you have overreached and misused the statute and be obligated to refund the money that you have collected. Plus, you will probably, your own attorney fees will probably not be covered by your insurance. In addition, with a taxpayer lawsuit and questionable constitutionality of this action you propose to take, you'll probably have to pay the taxpayers' attorney fees also. And lastly, the money that you pay to Mount Healthy, which is 15% and is more than the 10% norm, will not be recoverable by the township. Basically, I think it's bad for townships. It's especially bad for you. And if you think you're having financial problems now, I think you should look down the road 3 years if what I'm suggesting here comes to fruition.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Next, Sharon Thompson.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Thompson. I reside at 8643 Monsanto Drive. I am a homeowner, and I'm also a single mother of 3 daughters. I moved here about 8 years ago, mainly because of the school district at Finneytown. 2 of my daughters have graduated, and they're both college students, and my youngest daughter is a sophomore. Now, I live in Springfield Township, but I work in the city of Cincinnati, and I pay an earning tax to the city of Cincinnati, and I believe that Springfield Township should be able to do the same. I do not want my property taxes increased, nor do I want services reduced. Now, I believe if voters had a choice between raising property taxes or increasing revenue through the JEDS and earning taxes, I believe that they would choose the latter. And I appreciate the trustees and all the work that you all have done in the presentation and all the information. So I don't think this is a subject or a decision that you all have made lightly. You've been doing this for several years, and I think it's time to act now. And I do support the JEDS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Kyle Hufford.
My name's Kyle Hufford. I live at 8527 Pringle Drive. I also own Kyle's Gun Shop over on Hempstead. I'm a resident, also a business owner. I'm against what you're doing. It's wrong. And I was there in Columbus at the committee hearing for HB 289 when I watched Representative Brian Hill say it right to your face that this is not what the JEDS is for. You know, we're getting exactly nothing for this new tax. No new services, only more taxes and more paperwork for our payroll. This hurts every business in the township and every employee working in the township. The JEDS was never meant to be used in this way. The size and scope of what you're doing, what you're proposing is unprecedented. There are some other townships who are abusing this law, but what the other abusers are doing pales in comparison to this proposal. Our group, the Springfield Township Coalition for Responsible Government, is prepared to fight this until the end. Soon, if this is voted on tonight, our group will go into full campaign mode. We'll go door to door, pass out flyers to the residents, put out yard signs, and we'll get more turnout on our side than you will on yours. This proposal will be defeated. If you vote to put this on the May primary ballot, our group will see to it that all of you are replaced. You know, it's ridiculous. We're sick and tired of the argument that this is the only option. I've got a solution for you. It's called bankruptcy. Chapter 9. It's specifically for municipalities. Detroit just went through it. It's what normal people do when they can't pay their bills. You know, I think it's something that should at least be explored before you ask the business owners and the workers in the township to pay more. You say you've exhausted all other options. Well, what about this one? I've visited every single business in this township. Every single person except for 2 are against this. Every single one except for 2. How can you fly in the faces of all the other business owners and put this on the ballot regardless of what they say or think? How do you, as elected officials, think that you will retain your offices? You say you don't want to do this, but you don't have any choice. Your back is up against the wall. Regardless of any of those circumstances, this is morally and ethically wrong, and you know it. You said it yourself, this is the first time you've ever really been opposed on anything. Well, there's a good reason for that. It's because it's wrong. I'll close by stating that I realize you're all in a tough position. I know you're trying to make the hard decisions, but we need to think about what's right for the township. The JEDS is not it. We need to explore other options like incorporation, bankruptcy, Chapter 9 if it comes down to it, before even thinking of going to the voters and asking them to help you tax someone else. You know, in this noise about a CIC, the Community Investment Corporation, I feel that that amounts to nothing more than paying off the residents who work here, or who work here and live here, basically just to earn their votes. I don't think it's fair that someone who lives here doesn't have to pay it, but someone who lives outside the township who will likely have to pay this on top of what they're already paying where they work, or where they live, rather, and they get no vote. I'm disgusted, and I can't believe we're even having this conversation. Common sense would tell you this is a bad idea. The reason for this hearing is to take public comment and to consider it before you decide to vote to put this on the ballot. I hope you do reflect on some things that are said here tonight and give it a week or 2, or at least a few days, to let it sink in and then make a decision. I think if you decide to put this on the ballot tonight after the meeting, it's obvious this whole thing is just a dog and pony show and you don't really care what anyone thinks. You know, I don't think that's going to sit well with anybody. However, I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what happens, because that's what you did last time. Now we have even, you know, we've got a lot of opposition here. You know, just be aware that we're watching. Our group is becoming more and more politically active. We will actively, you know, work against this. We have a huge grassroots movement happening here, and we're gaining more and more support every day. Don't think for a moment that myself or someone else from our group won't run for trustee and that we won't do everything we can to reverse your actions here tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have I have a couple names here I can't quite make out, but how about Joe Gorman?
Oh boy. I'm Joe Gorman, live at 8824 Falmouth Drive. Been here since 1997. I'm currently the president of the Finneytown Civic Association, and we voted at our December board meeting to endorse this JED. We were not all happy about it, but we all come to the conclusion that at least for the moment, it's going to be a financial bridge until some sanity returns to Columbus and some of the tax money that we paid to Columbus comes back to us. A couple comments before about how the staff is doing everything they can to keep things going. I know Tom is the person who keeps the Senior Citizen Center going. If he is laid off, who's going to do his job? Kim does a great job with keeping the community informed. If she goes because of budget cuts, what happens? All those communication links are gone. Chris and Mike have been working hard for as long as I've been here, basically. So I like to keep at least keep them on staff and keep their dedication going. But tomorrow, Governor Casey will be here in Finneytown at the school. So maybe we can get a contingent over there to convince him to maybe start releasing some of the funds. So anyway, we will support the JEDs and we support the board in its effort to at least as a financial bridge to continue this effort. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Next, we have Kevin Holder.
Yes, I'm Kevin Holder. I live at 8471 Schuman. Been there since '63. Having read the statute and the legislative background behind it, I agree with some of the others here. You're absolutely abusing the intent of the statute as put forward by the people who put it in place in the legislature. That's straight up my read on it. If you think putting higher taxes on businesses is a good idea, I suggest y'all look at California and New York and see how it's working out for them. Florida and Texas are doing pretty doggone well getting that business that is leaving those jurisdictions because they don't have those high taxes. So we're just going to increase the burden on the businesses here. You pointed out, Joe, that it's not going to have any impact on the residents here. Well, I submit to you, you're wrong. I don't think Kroger's is just going to say, we're not going to raise the prices a little bit to make up for this. I don't think the other businesses, whether it's Bob Evans or the Wings place under Chipotle or Applebee's or any of those are just going to take this and say, oh, well, we'll just pay it out of our pocket. I think the people that frequent those businesses are going to ultimately end up paying that extra tax that you're asking to come out of the pocket. So yes, it will have an impact on the people that live in your jurisdiction. It's not going to be a direct impact, and you're seeing to it by somebody who works in the district or in the township and also lives in the township. I agree with what Kyle said. I think you're buying their vote. I think it's a pretty bold-faced attempt to do it, and you're not really trying to hide it. I give you credit for that, but I don't agree with buying the vote. It's an attempt to redistribute the wealth. I'm a consultant. I work in a multitude of jurisdictions every year, multitude of states. I've paid taxes in over half the states in the country and an awful lot of the jurisdictions in each of those states. I haven't gotten to vote on a single one of them. I understand what you said earlier, that that's kind of the way government works. I also understand you said we'd come back to it. I guess I'm the one that's going to bring it back. You didn't do that. But the bottom line is that's just flat out un-American, and it's wrong. It may be the way governments work, but I do believe our founding fathers had something to say about it, and I think they had a little tiff with England over it. That was one of the things that caused the Revolutionary War. I'm not advocating having a war. You can keep your gun in your holster. I'm not advocating that at all. But I am saying it is not an American thing to do. And so you guys can go down, you can do this if you want to, and just go down in history as being un-American. That's my read on it. Take it for what it is. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Let's see who else we have here. I have one name I can't read. Chris Offrey.
Thank you for having this hearing, the opportunity to say a few words. I haven't prepared any written remarks, so I'll have to speak from the heart. I'm Chris Offrey. I live at 625 Renard Avenue. I've lived there. Well, I've been in Finneytown for about 20 years now. And one of the things I'm very concerned about is that we maintain Springfield Township as a neighborhood, as a community of choice, a place where people who have choices want to live. And as we've seen over my 20 years in the Cincinnati area, the struggle of the first suburbs, and certainly Springfield Township is one of them, and not to the extent of some of the first suburbs, but they are exhibiting many of the same types of symptoms and struggles that we see around Hamilton County. And it's not just Hamilton County. You go out to Butler County and Warren County and Claremont County and other places as well. So I think it's critical that we invest in ourselves for the future. If we just look at today and forget about what we are likely to become 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and we don't proactively plan for that future, we are going to be in trouble. Now, having said that, I don't like taxes any more than anybody else, and I appreciate the concerns of the business community. At the same time, I know that if Springfield Township is allowed to decline, that those businesses will suffer probably far more, or at least as much as those of us who have property here, residences here. So I think it's in the best interest of all of us that we carefully think of ways that we can raise the basic funding that we need to keep Springfield Township a place where people want to live. I think your idea of offering grants to make the Springfield Township residents whole is a good one. I don't think it's buying votes. I think it's a recognition that we already pay very high property taxes, and that there are many people, especially those who work in the 30% of the land where they pay no property taxes at all, that they use the streets, they use the fire, they use the police, and they pay nothing. And I work in the city of Cincinnati and pay 2.1% and get for my streets and police and fire services. I think it's only fair that they contribute to the upkeep of our community as well. So I'm not swayed by that argument. I'm also the idea that residents of the city of Cincinnati, for example, would be able to offset their Cincinnati taxes, payroll taxes. They'd be able to deduct the amount that they pay in Springfield Township. So, in fact, there's no impact on them at all. All it does is recognize that they're imposing costs on Springfield Township, and they're shifting some of that from Cincinnati to the township. So in that respect, I think it's a very fair approach. We have a very vexing problem facing us, and you are elected to deal with difficult issues. I'm sure none of you are happy to have to deal with us. And, you know, the kinds of rhetoric that's coming out tonight, it's interesting to, you know, make that even more difficult. But at the same time, I know that you are carefully considering the difficult decision in place and doing what you feel has to be done. At the same time, understand that the future of the community and for all of us in a variety of ways is at stake here. So I support the JEDs. I think it's what we have to do, and I think we need to move forward and aggressively address the needs of the community to maintain us as a community of choice, not a community of last resort.
Thank you, Chris. We have next Tim Fain.
Hello, Tim Fain, 850 West North Bend Road. Lived in Springfield Township for 17 years or so now. Been involved in the community mostly through sports, coached baseball, softball, soccer, basketball. I don't know, has anybody done the math out here on this 1.5% on, say, $50,000? It's a very small grant you're going to get back on the CIC. How does that work? The grant?
If you are a township resident and you work in Springfield Township and your employer collects the 1.5% tax, at the end of the year, if you apply for this grant, you will be reimbursed the amount you paid in.
That's for everybody currently living in Springfield Township?
Yes.
Okay. The big thing I'm against for this is 20% of the residents, or 80% of the residents have a chance to vote for this who don't work in Springfield Township. That, to me, the numbers just doesn't make any sense. And I understand if I get a job in Cincinnati, I got to pay that tax, but that was my choice. I knew that was coming when I took that job. But to put that out on the ballot to have residents vote for 20% of the people that has to pay this tax, it's a no-win for the business owners. There's you're going to get something for nothing. All you got to do is vote yes, and you get somebody's going to pay going to increase the taxes. And that's what I'm against about this whole situation. To me, it's not fair. The math just doesn't add up. You're asking for 20% to 80% of the people get a vote and they get stuff for free. 20% of the people are paying the money. It just doesn't add up. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fain. Next, we have Sherry Stevenow.
Good evening. I'm Sherry Stevenow. I live on Waycross Drive, longtime resident of Springfield Township. What I'd like to do tonight is had lots of conversations with the trustees and the administration. I think this is my 5th meeting. So with all due respect to the trustees tonight, I'd actually like to address the audience that's here. So what I've put together is just a series of facts called Did You Know that I've seen happen over the last couple months that I thought everyone should be aware of.
Sherry, the purpose of a public meeting is to address the Board of Trustees. If you want to have like your own meeting, you can do that, but you need to address the board. That's the purpose of this meeting.
They can all hear us.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll go ahead then. So this is called Did You Know? Did you know Springfield Township already has one of the highest property tax rates in the state of Ohio? And on top of the federal, state, and local tax, it puts us in then with the additional 1.5% income tax. The folks in Springfield Township will be paying close to 40% in terms of a tax burden. Additionally, the 1.5% JEDS tax that's being proposed tonight is double the Forest Park rate at 0.75%. And the 1.5% is one of the highest in the region as well. Did you know the state of Ohio has pending legislation that would restrict this misuse of the JEDS? It's called House Bill 289. And as we talk tonight, Trustee President Joe Honorlaw and Administrator Mike Hinenkamp testified before the Ohio House, and were specifically told by the representative there that this is not what the JEDS is intended to do. Did you know the trustees changed the contract during the 30-day public review period in direct violation of the Ohio Revised Code? Did you know the trustees increased the term from a 10-year tax to a 40-year tax and made it renewable for up to 70 years in spite of clear public opposition? 70 years is 3 generations. So it's my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. That's a lot of tax to pass the way the JEDS bill is written. Did you know the trustees purposely held separate meetings for churches and schools, businesses, and a public hearing, and then challenged residents when they wanted to attend a business or a school meeting? Did you know the township officials directed Waycross Media not to air the video of the public hearing because it would showcase the overwhelming opposition and also highlight the negative treatment that many of the residents received with their comments. Did you know the trustees misled the citizens of Mount Healthy by purposely giving them a different contract to review than the one that was on file for Springfield Township citizens to review? Did you know the trustees declared it an emergency so they could push the JEDS ballot issue through before the state of Ohio enacts restrictions? Did you know the trustees plan to spend more than $60,000 of your tax dollars for a special election in February, hoping for low voter turnout? That's a lot of money for a township that claims to have cut spending and to not have funding available for even basic services. Did you know the trustees hired a professional consultant to help them get the JEDS through? They've used your tax dollars to work against you. And did you know the trustees also delayed the special election when they faced public opposition? Then they claimed to have acted responsibly and saved taxpayer dollars by delaying it to the May regular election. Did you know this JEDS is unprecedented in size and scope, covering the entire 17 square miles of the township? JEDS were intended to be used for small, defined areas, such as a mall or a hospital or a specific road corridor, again, to spur economic development. Did you know that this tax significantly affects our policemen and firemen who have to pay this out of their tax? The trustees are undermining these dedicated individuals and then threatening to cut safety services for us. Did you know the township uses your tax dollars to pay the law director well over $100,000 a year for part-time services and not comply with the laws of the Ohio Revised Code? Did you know the township spent your tax dollars and staff time to develop this 100-page presentation that's pushing the JEDS, yet they claim to be short on staffing and budget? Did you know the trustees are creating something called the CIC, the Community Improvement Corporation, with a stated purpose to have the flexibility to do things a township cannot currently do? I have been asking for months for a copy of what the CIC plan would be, how it's funded, where the money's going to, and how it will be used, and I've not gotten a response. Did you know that even if the JEDS passes, the township has already said it will need more revenue and is proposing more levies for property taxes, fire, police, and safety services? So in summary, do you really know what the trustees will do next? Perhaps it is time for the trustees to listen to the public as elected officials, protect small businesses and employees so that we can keep them in Springfield Township, and consider new solutions that move the township forward. Thank you.
Well, we will. Let's see, next we have, is it Nancy Benther? Yes.
I'm a brand new business. My only comment is...
Would you come up to the podium, please?
I live in Wyoming, and I'm a brand new business here. And my only comment is, did you know that this is involuntary servitude?
Next, Jeff Dean.
My name is Jeff Dean. I live at 7491 View Place Drive. And, well, all I can say is if people want to destroy the township as it is now, and residents begin to see their property values and the things that, you know, they fought for as far as this being one of the best bedroom communities around, if they see that threatened, you know, against, you know, these awful threats of you know, lawsuits and, you know, bringing everybody down, I think that, you know, we'll be able to get residents to vote for this. And, you know, I want everybody to know, too, that, you know, Ms. Stevenow is her husband was going to run for governor to the right of Mr. Kasich. And, okay, your relative? Okay, and so if, what I want to know is what their proposal is, for funding any services. That's what I haven't heard. I've just heard a lot of emotional stuff about government, that I understand that people feel that. So, I say, bring it on. The residents will vote.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Next, Bill Sumi.
Good evening. I'm Bill Summy. I live on Acreview Drive and have for the entire 47 years of my existence. Thank you for your service to our community. I want to start out with that. I am an opponent of this tax. I do not agree with it. I think there's better ways that we can come up with the funding than to hurt our business community. With that said, a lot of what's been said already was on my agenda, so I'm not going to repeat it. On the numbers that are going to be generated, I think it was 1.125 million roughly, and then we get 939 or something like that, if I remember correctly. What percentage is that is business earnings and employee tax?
Bill, those are estimates that we do. It is just that it is an estimate. We don't know, and we will not know, because a lot of the payrolls and the earnings of businesses are for any privately owned business, there's no way of knowing.
Okay. And this CIC, it's just something that's being talked about, or is this already an agreement, or what's the status of that?
The board has made a commitment to create a CIC if the voters approve a JEDS in Springfield Township for the purposes stated to have this economic grant back to citizens who reside in the township and work here. And that actually came about in one of our earlier meetings where one of the citizens got up and said, hey, I already live here. I pay high property taxes. I don't think it's fair that we get this too. You ought to think about giving us a rebate. So that idea came from some of the citizens. But the CIC does not exist. It has not been drawn up. It is a commitment of the board to create one. But if people are asking for the documents, as to all the details of it, that's not in existence yet.
So basically, there's no guarantee that it will come about if this JEDS is passed?
Well, you have our word as we're sitting here in a public meeting saying that if it's created, it would be, if the JED is voted in, that would be created. That's a part of it.
Okay. All right.
And it's something that certainly we would do prior to the JED going on the ballot, so that it's official, for the voters, that they would know that it was there. A community improvement corporation is used by many communities, not just for an economic grant as it applies to a JED, but it can be used for development of property, the acquisition of property, doing things that would allow the township to move forward. And there's been an awful lot of talk here tonight about the JED that somehow we're misusing this. I can tell you, I did go to Columbus. I spoke before the House committee. We had one representative in a room about this size with, I don't know, there was 20 representatives there, who said he thought it was an improper use of it. We spoke to the author of the JEDS bill, who said that he would work with us, and he thought that actually this might be a model as to how the JEDS could work in the future. That's Senator Schuring. I also had another representative come up to us after Mike Hennenkamp and I had testified, and he said, God, did we screw you people down there? That was one of the representatives that was in that meeting. His actual comment, he's like, what we did screwed you people. And so it's just as we're seeing here tonight, there's people for and against it. There's people in the legislature that would agree with the position that, no, what we're doing is not right. There's other people that said, absolutely, no, this is what it's there for. The fact of the matter is we've spent years working on acquiring property, being able to have the long-term future for this township is not to try and tax our residents, our employees, another 1.5%. The long-term future has got to be that we increase our tax base and have additional development here in the township. And we probably need to have a meeting where we sit down and show that. But we have some very exciting plans to bring new development to the core here of Springfield Township, which I think is going to make a huge difference in our property values, in our future tax rates. But if we let what the state is doing trash our government and our community in the meanwhile before we can get those things off the ground, it's, none of it's going to come to fruition. So I think but thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate the comments. Next.
I think it's Rick.
Do we have a Rick? Can't read your writing, Rick. Is there somebody here by the name of Rick? It starts with last name with a C, C-H-U-R-L-E-Y, something like that? Is there anybody else here that has signed up to speak and didn't get an opportunity to? Robin? Maybe it is.
Anything's
I think, Robin,
And you know it started with an R. Date with Mark Harmon at 8 o'clock, and you're going to make me late.
Okay, sorry about that.
Last night. My name's Robin Hindley. I live at 6341 Ridgefield Drive. I've been a resident of the township for about 13 years. I also have another hat. I'm the current township liaison for the Finneytown Civic Association. I won't repeat the proponents that are for the JES. Most of them are on the Finneytown Civic Association Executive Board. We did meet. Chris was nice enough to come out on a rather raunchy Saturday morning to my house and explain all the nuts and bolts of how this was to work. We thought about it a long time individually and collectively. There was a lot of Facebook and a lot of emails back and forth. Personally, I don't like it, but in lack of a better alternative, and unless somebody that's in opposition's got something better to lay on the table, I don't think we have any choice. That's not to say that if somebody doesn't come up with a better idea between now and then that we all can't shift a gear and change our minds too. So I want to be flexible, and I would ask everybody else to be flexible because we're all in this together. First and foremost, what I hear tonight disturbs me a great deal. I said 3 years ago, and you've all agreed with this, I think that there's been a long-standing attempt at the state level to put township government out of business. And this is just one more giant step in that direction. The enemy isn't in this room. The enemy's in Columbus. Because they want to see us go back to what we were before, which would have been what? Or where do we go to? We become part of county government. That's what happens if we go backwards, and you don't want that to happen because you're going to lose every sense of local control and immediate contact. I work for Hamilton County, and I can guarantee you if you pick up a phone, you're not going to get a call back the next day or the same day because you have a problem. Ain't going to happen. Sidebar, somebody said, what is 1.5% of 50,000? I think it's $750. Now, I work for the county, and I don't make $50,000 a year gross. I'll write a check for $750 if everybody will sit down in the same room and try to work as a group to hammer this out to what's in the best interest of all of us. And I'm sure that I can find somebody else on my board that would be willing to write that same check too, just to get people to listen to each other. Now, I was asked at the last meeting by Mr. Hufford if I would keep an open mind, and I did. He handed me a fact sheet, which I spent a lot of time reading and researching and doing background on. And what concerns me is much of what I'm seeing in social media. This has gone from people logically expressing their opposition to something to sliding over to be character assassinations of people's professional and personal activities. And I don't like that, because it's wrong. That doesn't belong in this forum. That belongs someplace else. What we're dealing with is the jazz good for the community or isn't it? And is it the only alternative that we have at this moment or isn't it? And that should be no further than where it goes. If anybody's got a better idea, I have a rather small house that's not entertainment friendly, but I'll open the door to anybody that wants to come for a meeting. You can sit on the floor. I'm a great cook. I'll feed you well. You want to put one together, we'll come and we'll listen, but we ask that you listen with us too. I think the township officials have done a pretty good job at getting a head start on this. Mike and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of things because we have a personality conflict, but I've got to give him credit. He saw this coming as much as 6 years ago and led the administration and the staff in the right direction to start dealing with it before it snowballed, and it really got big. So for that, I will commend you. That was good planning, and that is the job that they hire you to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. With that, I think we have heard from everyone who signed up to speak here this evening. Is there anyone else that is here that wants to speak that hasn't signed up? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Melissa Studlitz. I reside at 867 Northern Parkway. My thing is, you said that people that live in the township but don't work in the township are not affected by the JEDs. However, what about married couples? My husband, we live in Springfield Township, but he works out of Springfield Township. I work in Springfield Township. How will that affect me and my husband?
He works outside of the township.
Yes.
It will not, the JED's tax will not apply to him.
But how will it affect us at the end of the year?
You would, and you live in the township and work in the township?
Yes.
You would, the money that you paid into this would be returned to you.
Okay.
You have to file paperwork and it'll be returned to you as a grant.
Okay. So even if we file the taxes together, it'll still come back to us.
Yes. Yes. It's not an income. That's maybe a good, you're kind of, I think, bringing up a good point, and I've seen some of this even in the paper maybe kind of be incorrectly discussed. This is a payroll tax. It doesn't have anything to, it's a payroll tax for people, for their earnings here in the township. For example, let's say that you work here in the township and you earn $30,000 a year, and you also have some earnings from stock dividends. This does not apply to any other type of income. It's just earnings earned working at a business in Springfield Township in one of the zones that's up there. And you can apply for this grant, an economic development grant, in whatever that your employer withheld from your earnings, you would receive back in the form of a check.
Okay, and another thing is, how will this affect the people that are in poverty, that make under $30,000 a year, that don't even make $10,000 a year? How are you guys going to pass a JED to where you're going to tax them 1.5% and they barely make anything in a year? Like a single mother that has 3 kids. How are you going to tax them that 1.5 when they can barely provide for their family as it is?
Well, here's kind of the situation on this, and it hasn't been discussed, but this JED is a state law. In other words, if we are going to do this, we have to follow what is in the state law. And so we don't have a choice as to how we do that. The state has made certain choices, which we haven't really discussed tonight, but they changed Ohio law so that small business owners aren't going to pay income tax on the first $250,000 of income. That was a choice that our leaders in Columbus made. We didn't, it's nothing the township did. So there are going to be, while this might be a tax that would apply to local businesses, and we primarily have smaller businesses here in the township, they're going to get other tax breaks. It's something that the leaders in Columbus decided they're going to do. By the same token, for someone who is an employee, they're not going to get that break. And that's just the way the law is written. And so I would say that and it's just the same way we didn't support the idea that they take our tax dollars that we're earning now and sending to Columbus and that have been returned to us for the past almost 100 years. We didn't support those being taken away in the course of 2 years, but they did it to us anyway.
And also, people are trying to find another way instead of passing the JED. High schools, if they're wanting to raise money, they have a bake sale, they have car washes, they find ways to raise money. What if we put our heads together like high school students, and we came up with a way to raise the money, to pay for our bills? I mean, if we all came together, I'm sure we can all come up with something instead of this JED. Am I right? I mean, there have been communities that have come together and had a community yard sale and donated a portion of their proceeds to that township to help pay the bills. I'm not saying we're going to do it now, not in this frigid weather, but I mean, like later on in the year in the springtime, I'm sure everybody has all kinds of junk in their homes that they can find to get rid of. I'm sure you guys can too. So I mean that's something we can look at.
Okay, very good. Well, we appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Melissa, what was your last name, please?
Sedlitz.
Could you spell it?
Sedlitz, it's S as in Sam, E-D as in David, L-I-T-Z as in zebra.
Thank you.
Great. I missed it when you said it. Thank you.
And yes, sir, we got somebody down here in front.
I'm Eric Nebergall, Nebergall. I own a small business over in Compton Square. I have multiple employees. I've been here for, 8 years. Couple thoughts. Just because the state of Ohio is screwing you doesn't mean you have to turn around and screw us. Second thing is, I'm sure you're aware of what has happened in Elmwood, where they decided they would put up some speed cameras. Well, I'm sure you're also aware of what happened to them. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. We have, yes, go right. Velosta, go right ahead. You're
8987 Cotillion Drive. Dr. Vlasta Molak, V-L-A-S-T-A, M-I-L-A-K, you know. I've lived in Finneytown since April of 1982 in the same house. I raised 3 children here who went to Finneytown School, and I didn't pay much attention to what you guys are doing because I was more concerned about county, and some of you know that I go and speak to the county commissioners and to the city of Cincinnati. But for various reasons, last 2 years, since I've had the bottomless mug at the Brugger's, I've started paying attention to what's going on here, since you're next door. And have came to some conclusions. I used to be kind of impressed that you let people speak longer than 2 minutes, which is customary in Hamilton County, and that you seem to be responsive to the citizens, unlike in Hamilton County or city of Cincinnati, where they sit there and don't answer the questions. However, it seems to me that there is a similar lack of imagination that has been plaguing the city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County with their so-called development projects, which always end up in budget deficits. Like, for example, in 1996, somebody came up with the bright idea of increasing the sales taxes in order to pay for the stadiums, which were going to bring a lot of development, which never substantiates. As a matter of fact, both city and the county have budget deficit year after year because of those two stadiums. And now the city is going to build this so-called streetcar, and I'm afraid it's going to be a black hole just as much as the stadiums. Now, talking about this zone, whatever you call it, GEDZ, or joint whatever zone.
Economic development.
Economic development. Where is the economic development here? You want to bring more business in here. Well, you're not going to bring more business if all of a sudden there is a payroll tax. What business would want to do that? Move from wherever they don't have to pay such tax to bring here, to come here. So that doesn't seem to be very good idea for economic development. Sounds to me more like a streetcar and stadiums. As far as lack of revenues, well, tomorrow Case is here, so just beg him and don't let him go until he releases those funds. I mean, use some imagination.
Sounds like you're getting us a trip to jail.
Well, you know, if they have a surplus now because they don't release these death taxes, then perhaps that's an idea. Another idea is, since I'm an efficiency expert, especially when it comes to energy and utilities or other kinds of utilities, I have offered you to examine your water expenditure, your energy expenditures, but I needed some data from you and I never received them. I've requested also your budget figures and I never got it back. So it seems like you are starting to copy the Hamilton County inefficiency and stonewalling that I have experienced here in the Springfield Township. So it seems to me that you have not really examined yet the ways of cutting your expenses in order to balance your budget, but are doing this thing with Mount Healthy. Now, Mount Healthy is going to get 15% of it. What are they going to provide for it, aside from this semi-legal scheme to rob the businesses? What are they going to do for this 15% that you're going to give them? What, $170,000 or $180,000? Are they going to do something for it? Because you will be paying for the collection anyway.
The answer is, under the JED's law as it is written, it is mandatory that a township partner with a city. You cannot do it yourself. And so we went out to all the cities around the township, in not only first ring, but second, one removed, and they came back with the most favorable proposal, the cheapest overall cost to do it.
So for doing nothing except telling you, yes, you can do it with us, they'll be getting 15% of what you collect. That seems to me very excessive for doing nothing. So it doesn't seem like it makes sense. I suggest that you postpone voting for this tonight and examine other ideas. There were some citizens who were coming up with some ideas, and that you give me those data so that I can show you how you can cut on your water and energy bills and garbage bills so that we cut the waste. And catch Kasich tomorrow for sure.
Thank you. I believe there was one more hand here in the back row.
My name's David Whitcamp. I live at 697 Silverheads Drive. Been a resident of the township for about 25 years. This is the first time I've attended a meeting. I came here with an open mind. I wanted to learn more about the JEDs, and I appreciate all the communication tonight. I also appreciate the township folks here. You guys do a great job. I like living in Springfield Township. But what I would want to say in short is, I didn't intend to move into a city. I wanted to be in a township. This is the type of thing I wanted. I think what you're doing, your intentions are for the best. You're trying to do the best for the township. But I think after listening to everything, I'm convinced this is just fundamentally wrong, what you're doing. It's a reaction to what the state has done, as I understand it, funding, and you're trying to correct it. But I don't think this is the right way to do it. I heard some terms that struck me, scheme. When you start coming up with ways to give money back, when government takes money and gives money back, that's always suspect to me. When you're taking money from business or tax from business and employees, it's just not going to work in the long term. Again, I do appreciate what you're trying to do, but I just want to voice my opinion. I think you're wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. We got one more in the back here.
My name's John Ewald, and I live at 8645 Zenith Court. And basically, same thing, I came with an open mind tonight and everything, too. Two things that struck me. I'm a business person, and you look at things from a business standpoint. Mike, your projections this evening, you showed increase the 5-year plan with the increased revenues coming in, but you showed expenditure increases in the general fund of $200,000 a year. The fire department, when you did their projection, there was $150,000 a year increase each year estimated. Police, $200,000 a year increases. No increases in revenues, but increases in expenditures. I think we may want to find out what those additional expenditures are. We can't do anything with the revenues, but apparently you got an idea that expenditures are going to increase. So I think trying to explain that might help. My second point is nothing's for nothing. We're going to get $950,000 a year with the program, correct? We have estimated. Listening tonight, we have 8 people apparently working for the township in the finance. Is that administration or something?
Administration.
Who's going to administer this? Out of that $950,000 we're going to get, how many employees we're going to have to hire to take care of this? And, those are the kind of things. If we only have 8 people in administration, how's it going to be handled? Who's going to take on those additional responsibilities of the 8 people already?
John, those are 2 good questions, and I think they deserve an answer. It's to the first one, and I might let Mr. Hennekamp talk about how he's projected some of the increases, but our police and fire departments are unions, and we have to go through collective bargaining negotiation with them. And as their contracts come up, and every year or every several years when they expire, there's always a debate over what kind of raises will our employees get. And they're going to go to us and they're going to say, well, all the other local governments, all the other police departments and all the other fire departments, they're paying X. And, we need to be competitive if we're going to keep good employees. So over time, they're demanding cost of living increases, to keep up with inflation and things like that. We have increases in insurance. We have increases in gasoline, cruisers, you name it, all the stuff that comes along. And so we have those kind of increases over the years just gradually tend to, escalate what our operating costs are. To answer your question, though, about how many additional people will this require, the answer would be 0. And that's because Mount Healthy will be the collecting agency. They have to bear those costs. They have a outfit called RETA. It is I believe they're a national organization that collects taxes for local governments. I think they're based out of Youngstown, Ohio. Is that, Chris, is that right?
It's in the northeast part of the state.
Northeast part of the state.
So the 15% that we're going to pay Mount Healthy.
Yes.
They are doing something for
Yes,
that
they
money.
are. Yes.
And they're also going to handle the rebates back to the citizens.
Yes.
No, they won't. We will. CIC, we will.
The Springfield Township will pay the collection fee, according to the videos.
That's what I'm asking.
So out of the $930,000 increase, we got to pay.
I don't want to say anything incorrectly. Let's let Chris Gilbert or either one of you.
The only thing I would say is that we do pay, there's a collection fee, and Chris, you can go through the whole thing, but by state law, Mount Healthy has to do the collections. We couldn't do the collections if we.
I understand that, but if we get $950,000 a year out of $950,000, how much are we really going to get?
Well, we don't know that's the estimated number for one, but what I'm saying is we are not allowed to collect it, so there's no administrative cost to the township to collect that. Now, we will pay the direct cost for Rita's fee as proposed. So you want to go through how the contract?
Yeah, exactly how this will work is that of the estimated let's just say it's 1.125, which we estimated. Rita's costs right now are estimated to be 3 to 4% of the total collection of revenue is what they would charge in terms of collecting it. So you take 4% of the 1.125, so that's $45,000 that Rita's going to take off the top for collecting it. Okay? Then the remaining amount of $1,080,000 would then be split between the township and Mount Healthy, 85-15, as the proposed contract stipulates. Does that make sense?
Sure does.
Okay.
Who would pay for the CIC rebates?
And we went to other governments and asked them, can you do this cheaper? We went to Fairfield, different places, that were going to hire additional employees to do our collecting, and their numbers were coming back substantially higher, and that was, quite frankly, one of the big reasons that we decided, let's go with Mount Healthy. They were the cheapest of all and would return the most money to the township.
Yeah. So basically, there's a cut off the top for the collection. Mount Healthy's going to get their cut. The money that's going to be rebated back to the citizens of Springfield Township, that's going to be handled by.
You mean to answer that as well?
Go ahead, Chris.
The remaining roughly $918,000 to $930,000 left in terms of revenue, that's the 85% of the $1,080,000 that I referenced earlier. We're estimating approximately 20% of that revenue that the township would receive would then be paid back out in terms of the grant. So that's approximately $183,000. That would come out of the approximate $930,000 that we expected in revenue. In the JED's contract with Mount Healthy, it stipulates that they're to pay the township annually $30,000 to help pay for that, reimburse us for paying out that grant, which is theoretically their 15% cut of the 20% we're paying back in terms of to people in terms of the grant. So at the end of the day, the grant's going to cost the township. If you assume that the numbers that we had up there, estimates, come to fruition and are correct, the grant would be $153,000 out of the expected $930,000 that we would get. So at the end of the day, somewhere in the neighborhood of $760,000 to $770,000 would be our actual revenue from the JEDs after the grant's paid out. Does that make sense?
That's basically another $200,000 is going to be eaten out of the $950 number that we were looking at before. Fair.
Since we don't know how many people are going to apply for the grant, we don't know how much they make, so it's purely a guess. I just took, and that's the only thing we can do at this point is to take 20% off the top estimated.
I was just trying to get an idea of what realistically this was going to generate, is what I was trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John, very much.
Joe, I got a question for you related to that topic, directly. People who live outside the township, their office is in the township, but they work sometimes in the office, sometimes remotely in the township, sometimes outside of the township. How is that going to work? I know when you live in a township and work in Cincinnati, have your office in Cincinnati. If you work in Northern Kentucky, you work in Blue Ash, you don't pay the Cincinnati tax, so you might have to pay Blue Ash tax, not to pay earlier or whoever, but you don't pay the Cincinnati tax. It's withheld, but you get it back. How does that work here? If somebody lives outside the township, office in the township, but works just a half the year outside of the township, will they get that rebated? Have we thought about that? Is that part of the number?
I'll let Chris address that.
Yes, in my conversation with my health, I asked that very specific question because that's a good point and we wanted to know that. How it would work is that if you get your paycheck from the end of the business in Springfield Township, you would be taxed that income. If you can show that part of that income, you've already paid tax to another jurisdiction where you actually did the work, then you would get, that would reduce the amount that you would owe into the JED's tax.
Let's say you were working in Green Township, where there is no income tax. But you're not deriving the income from working in the township here.
If you can show, if you can show that your income should not be taxed because that portion of time was elsewhere, then you would not be charged that income tax to the JED.
So, but is that number in your 900 whatever thousand, and how does it back out?
There's no way we
It's
can.
purely, the number is purely an estimate at this point. We understand that 1.125 could be lower. It could be significantly higher. It's purely an estimate. That's the only thing we can do at this point in time. There's no way possible to get an exact number.
Yeah, one of the things that we'll say in doing the estimate, there's a good number of public businesses in the township, schools, township. We know what our payroll is, there's schools. So some of the data was available. And then we met with other municipalities that do payroll collections all the time. So for instance, we could look at a McDonald's and say, what does a typical McDonald's generate? Where you really don't know are on the individual businesses, Kyle's business, the CPA's office. There's no way of knowing. Some of the medical offices, you just don't know. So you're trying to use you're plugging in some type of number based on information we got back from municipalities that do it, but it could be off. But I think it's going to be, and everybody we've had look at it thought, if anything, we were a little conservative. Some of the cities said you'll probably get a better amount than that. What we didn't want to do was promote a higher number and then see it come in substantially lower just because we didn't have any real basis to be able to do that. So I would say, our best guess is somewhat conservative, but we did it based on a lot of conversations with folks that have done this for many, many years and try to use it, but there's some guesswork there, no question.
And wait a minute. And I would just say one thing to that. If this would turn out to generate more money than we needed, we've written this contract in such a way that the Board of Trustees can adjust the rate. It's also something, if state law changes, that we don't need this, that we have the option, the township, of ending this contract at any time. Those are some terms that the Board of Trustees insisted be in the thing. So.
You couldn't unilaterally change it without North Healthy's go-ahead. It said it needed the consent of all contracting parties.
Laura, that's not the case, is it?
I can show you, and I don't have my copy here, I can show you where it is. While she's looking that up, can you answer the question about who would be in charge of the administration of the CIC rebates? Because the Springfield Township is in charge of that, that would involve additional payroll in terms of hiring someone to do all that work. So I imagine that would be a lot of paperwork. What? Right. But if it were to happen, who would be in charge of the processing of all those rebates? Because that would become an additional cost.
Sammy, did you want to
Okay.
address the CIC
Well,
question?
The CIC, we would have data, or the collecting agency would have data as to what each individual person paid in. It would be up to that person to submit a form saying, I want to apply for this rebate. I don't think it's going to be, in day of computers and that, incredibly, there'll be some administrative costs to that, and I can't tell you right off the top of my head how that will work. Some of this is in concept. Tina, we've said as a board, based on some of the feedback we've gotten at the earlier meeting, that, okay, from those, we had a number of people that came here and said, hey, I live in Springfield Township, this is my home, I pay high taxes, I don't think you should tax us both ways. And it was for that reason that idea came up. If you go way back to the very beginning when we started talking about this, the economic grant wasn't part of it. It was.
Business owners who pay property taxes within the tax code.
Did
she find it?
And I'm just
Okay.
asking if you thought everything through, because it sounds like you haven't thought out who's going to pay for the administration of the CIC rebates, and there's another cost that hasn't been factored into the whole picture.
Your comments duly noted. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Did Laura find the?
Oh, we did. I'll talk about the automatic termination provision. Tina, you're incorrect. There's a voluntary termination provision which says that the contract may be terminated at the discretion of Springfield Township.
I saw that, but a couple pages after that, it says the exact opposite.
No.
Do you want me to show it to you?
No, Tina.
I got a copy of it, I just.
It says, in the event that there's a legislative enactment that makes it disadvantageous, we can cancel it. That stands on its own.
Want me to show, because I can show you exactly.
Tina, there are other termination provisions that require mutual consent. That is absolutely true, but
If you're so sure, why don't you just give it to me for a second and I'll point it out?
Because she's our lawyer.
yeah, I don't really want to debate legal terms with you.
Well, it's.
I'm telling you, you are correct. There are mutual termination provisions in this agreement. That doesn't negate the fact that the particular one that Mr. Honolulu referenced, which is a change in the legislature or a disadvantageous use of the tax, that is at the sole discretion of the township.
And that is a very broad, if it's disadvantageous if the Board of Trustees determines it's disadvantageous for Springfield Township to collect this tax, we have a right to end it. That was something I specifically asked be put in this contract. And I think you have to all understand.
In fact, that was the change.
That was
the only real, it was the substantive change between that they've alleged have been, we switched and baited. That was it. We've basically added that language to give the township greater authority.
Yeah. There has been some definite misinformation put out here tonight. It's unfortunate that has happened.
Because you're not letting me even point it out.
Please, come get the contract.
We didn't know you were an attorney, Tina.
I'm telling you, you are correct, but you are not correct in your legal interpretation of that section.
So while she's looking at that, what about the fact that the business owners that are paying property taxes, having to pay the 1.5% of that property of the business as well?
There is no doubt that is a issue. That's not something that we can address. But as I said before, Kyle, there's been a change in state law that local businesses aren't going to pay an income tax on the first $250,000 of income. So there's going to be money coming back to you that way. Now, it's different. Well, and you might have to ask some of the leadership in Columbus, why did they decide to balance the state budget at the expense of local government? And at the end of the day, it costs so much money to run the township is in many ways a business. And if you chop, any of you, I ask you, take your business and take 50% of your revenues away and tell me how well it's going to run next year. It's not going to run very well. And you can cut and cut and cut, but it's not going to go well for you. And we don't have a lot. We have two options. We have property taxes and we have this JEDS. Wish there was something other than that. I don't like this any more than anyone else, probably less than a lot of the people that are here testifying against it. And I have resisted it for years, and it was going to impact my business here in the township. But we don't have much in the way of alternatives. I think the hand that we've been dealt, if we look at everything else, bankruptcy has been suggested, is not an answer. If you want to see your community fail, go home and think about, what's my house going to be worth if that happens? If I don't have the safety services that I have, if I don't have the parks and the recreation and all the things that the township provides, go home and think about, how's that going to impact me? I understand this. I understand some of the emotions. I understand the threats that people are going to sue us and they're going to run against us and defeat us as trustees and all that kind of stuff. And that's all part of it. I mean, I guess when you go into public office, you got to take that kind of stuff. But I'm going to tell you, as trustees, we are going to always do what we think is in the best interest of this community. And if we're wrong, then it's up to the voters to vote us out. No doubt about it. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I've been on a number of boards with Frank and the like.
Right.
And the property's been in my family since 1938, so I don't want it to come off like I'm threatening somebody or anything. I'm just hoping that you have recognized and got thorough legal opinions. I'm sorry I have to lay that on her. that she can stand up to this, because I think there's a real issue there.
These jeds are, I appreciate that, Bill, and I wasn't taking your comments as a threat per se, but there's been other people who have threatened they're going to sue us. There are jeds all over Ohio. This is not the first jed for Springfield Township. We already have one, and I don't know how many people know that, but there are, so, if that happens, it happens. But there again, and I think one of the important things, and I was here tonight, and what we were hoping for as a board is somebody could come forward with some solution other than this. Be happy to take it. If there was a way for us to continue running this place without doing this, Jed, we wouldn't do it. I didn't hear that tonight. I heard bankruptcy. I heard incorporation. You know what incorporation involves? Income tax. Every city has an income tax. Who's that going to apply to? Everybody. So, and if you look at our map, if we incorporate, all the places that aren't physically attached don't incorporate. They remain Springfield Township. They would end up owning this building, our fire department, our police station, our service department, and the Corps could start a new city. That's not progress. That's not a solution. That's moving backwards. So, I mean, I'm just being honest with you. That's how I see a lot of this. Yes, Sherry, you have a comment.
Yeah, I guess I would just like the record to show that I've been working with, I've been at the meeting since October. I've offered to all the trustees to actually sit down, and talk about some options. I absolutely think the township should move forward. I think there are a lot of ideas and ways to do that, but, without a reciprocating party to sit down and share some of the ideas, we're not able to bring those forward. So, again, I want the record to show that lots of people have ideas and have offered, and like this, lady said, she can't even get the information that she needs. I have an additional question. The judge consultant that's been hired, what's the gentleman's name or lady's name?
On the comment about not getting the information that she's requested, she asked to meet with me, and I came here and sat around for half an hour. She never showed up. But if we didn't pay any of our utility bills, it would not solve all our, there's some things you might do to save a small fraction on utility bills. It would not move the needle.
I'm not speaking to that specifically. I guess in principle, what I'm saying is that we believe that there are some opportunities to either increase revenue, cut costs, and there are a number of levers. Certainly economic development ought to be at the top of the list. And so I think there's an opportunity to take a look at those, and we haven't been able to get that exchange, even though I've been asking since October.
Well, we're happy to talk to you if you have some specific concrete proposals. We'll be happy to discuss those with you.
And Mr. Honolulu, I met with her. I'm not the young lady that's talking now. So, we have made contact with
Velasta?
Velasta, yes.
Okay.
And the meeting was was excellent, and it was a good open discussion. So one of the benefits of living in a township is that you have the government that's closer to the people, and that we have hearings like this, and that we can talk, and that we're available, and we have committees, because we're not sitting up here making these decisions by ourselves in isolation. We're not operating in a silo. We have committees that help make decisions as well. So I would suggest if you have and you want to schedule a time to meet, then you should do that.
And I will say the record will show that I have offered. So, can we go back to my question, the name of the judge consultant that's been hired?
George Glover has been hired by the township, and he has helped us with some of the negotiations regarding the bills that have been been offered before the state legislature regarding not only JEDs, but a lot of different issues.
Yeah, he isn't just for JEDs. He helps us with a lot of different issues in front of the state. This is just one of many that he's working on. It's public record, I'm sure.
Yes.
You just have to request it.
You certainly can.
And somebody will copy it for you, You may not get the day you walk in, but they'll get it for you.
You have to make the request during normal business hours.
Right.
I understand that. I'm happy to follow the process. Can you tell me when he was brought on board?
Not off the top of my head. But the one thing that
I think you'll find that when it comes back.
October, November.
And can you tell me about what his salary is tonight?
Salary. Paid a fee.
he's paid a fee. I don't recall it off the top of my head.
Is it so like an hourly fee then?
Monthly. And this guy's a lobbyist. He's somebody that has been hired by many governmental jurisdictions in Southwest Ohio. And I'll tell you the reason that we did this is because it has become painfully obvious what the state of Ohio can do to you with the stroke of a pen. And if we don't have a voice up there, and if we don't know the right people to talk to and how to let them hear our story, what our community's about, you can get run over, and really bad things can happen to you. And it's for that reason that we've, along with a number of other governments across Southwest Ohio, have contracted with George to be able to be an effective voice for us in Columbus.
But he's not here tonight? Is I hear the residents?
No.
Can I go back to this? And I understand, and I'm not saying that, obviously you have the law degree. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying the wording of this sounds, the way it sounds to me, let me read it. Cessation of JED's income tax, modification of rate of levied income tax. That's the title of the section.
Tell me what section you're in.
4.9.
All right, 4.9.
And it's titled cessation.
Wait. 4.9 is what the JED's board gets to do.
Right, but let me just, it says.
No, you need,
But can I,
well, before you read it, you need to, this is the problem, a contract in context. That is what a JED's board can do. That is not what the township can do. It's the JED's board. Okay.
Okay, it says the levy of contracting parties. And it said the contracting parties were Springfield Township and Mount Healthy. So that sounds to me like Mount Healthy could come back later and say, you can't eliminate this if you don't agree. That's where I was coming from, and I think that's a valid interpretation of that.
Tina, you're incorrect. What that does is it says the JED's board cannot make a decision to modify the income tax rate. It's a group of people that are on the JED's board to control the JED's tax. They cannot modify the tax without the approval of the contracting parties. It has nothing to do with whether the contracting parties can terminate the contract, whether they can modify the income tax, what the township can do at its sole discretion. Nothing to do with that. That's just saying that neither of the parties have given the JED's board the authority to change the income tax. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Tina, let me.
That's for that section, Tina. It's not for the overall contract. That's why contracts are written in sections. And that section, yeah, that board cannot, you need both votes. That has nothing to do with about the whole contract. I mean, you got to read it in context.
It does not interfere with the township's right to cancel the contract, which is what you said earlier.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Who is the JED's board? Who's the board?
The JED's board has not been formed because the JED's would have to be approved by the voters. And that's one thing we haven't really talked much about tonight, but I assume people understand. All we can do as a board of trustees is vote to throw this out on the table for the voters to decide. It is not for us to pass or reject it. It is up to the voters. So you would not create a JED's board until a JED's has been passed by the voters. But it's, again, one of the things that's required by Ohio law. The Springfield Township and Mount Healthy, as I recall, would nominate certain people to be on that JED's board who meet, I believe, once a year, kind of annually, to oversee it, to just make sure that it's following the way it's supposed to legally. And those would be people that would be appointed by the township and Mount Healthy. Okay. With that, I think we have, I'm getting the sign here from Bill to wrap this up. I want to thank you all for coming. I understand this is a difficult issue. It has been a difficult issue for everyone. We do appreciate your comments. We are going to, at this point, I'm going to entertain a motion to end the public hearing portion of our meeting this evening, or our hearing this evening. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. Mr. Burning? Aye. Mr. Farland?
Aye.
Mr. Honolo?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
I would say this, based on all of the comments that we have heard this evening, I would like to consider this further and have time to think about it, to deliberate, and if we take action on this issue, to do so probably, I don't know, at another time, maybe our next board meeting.
The 14th.
Yes.
Which would be January 14th.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, the 14th, be your regular board meeting.
Next Tuesday, January the 14th, and that would be at 5:30 here in this room.
I agree.
Does that make sense
That
to
makes
the
sense to me.
rest of the board?
Yes.
Okay. With that, then, I don't think we need a motion to, Laura, do we need
I
a...
would do a motion not to hold this special meeting, because you announced you were
We
going to have
announced
one.
we were going to do that. All right. Do we have a motion then not to have a special meeting of the Board of Trustees tonight to consider enactment of this JED's resolution, but instead to continue the matter until our next regularly scheduled board
I
meeting?
think I would just cancel the
Or
meeting.
just
because
cancel
You may not
this.
do it at the next meeting.
Be January 14th.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, the 14th, be your regular board meeting.
Next Tuesday, January the 14th, and that would be at 5:30 here in this room.
I agree.
Does that make sense
That
to
makes
the
sense to me.
rest of the board?
Yes.
Okay. With that, then, I don't think we need a motion to, Laura, do we need
I
a,
would do a motion not to hold a special meeting, because you announced you were
we
going to have
announced
one.
we were going to do that. All right, do we have a motion then not to have a special meeting of the Board of Trustees tonight to consider enactment of this JED's resolution, but instead to continue the matter until our next regularly scheduled board
I
meeting?
think I would just cancel the
Or
meeting.
just
because
cancel
We may not
this.
do it at the next
We
meeting.
may not do it then. All right.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Bernie? Aye. Mr. Farmer?
Aye.
Mr. Honeylaw?
Aye.
That's canceled.
All right. I want to thank everyone again for coming. We do appreciate your comments and concerns. And Mr. Burning, welcome to Springfield Township Board of Trustees.
Your first meeting.
Your first meeting.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do we have a?
You already adjourned.
We've adjourned. All right. Thank you, everyone.